Hey everybody, it's Dave Dugdale, learningvideo.com. So about this time after NAB, I usually create a wrap-up video. Last year, I think I created one. I just rambled on for basically 30 minutes. I'm gonna keep this one a lot shorter. So I thought I'd go through like 7 different items real quick. The first one is Davinci Resolve 14. Made 3 major improvements. Performance, which is great for me. Collaboration, don't care about too much. And audio, which is a welcome because I've been using their plugins and this would be built in, which would be, I think, a better solution. I used to use Premiere Pro for many years, and I went over to the Premiere booth and I was asking them about speed grade. And are you going to kill it off? Are you going to just or work on it in the background and then bring it back maybe in a couple of years after you've rewritten the whole thing from a company maybe that you purchased before? They couldn't tell me. So the thing that I don't like about Premiere is their color tab. They're not adding much to it. They're not developing it. They didn't add anything new in this latest release of Premiere CC. Basically, they were just talking about titles and a few other things that I guess are essential and important, but I didn't really care about too much. We're on the Resolve 14 side of things. It seems like they're developing really quickly. Now, unfortunately, I can't give you any update. I haven't loaded on my machine yet. It's been a few days since I've been home from NAB, and I can't because I've got another project down there and you can't have both going at the same time. So I'll definitely create a separate video on that once I dig into it and see how the performance is. I guess the next thing would be the Sony A9. I was hoping on that Sunday before NAB started that they would announce a Sony A9S or A7S3, but they didn't, unfortunately. So, but the A9 looks like a monster. Went over by the booth. Of course, I had to try out the 20 frames per second.
You have the option.
That's amazing.
Obviously. Oh, it is actually set to back button.
New battery, but it's significantly higher capacity battery.
This is fun. And that was pretty cool, but I don't know where exactly they're going to head, if they're going to create an A7S3, which I don't think is the case anymore. I think they're going to create it like an A9S because I think they love to keep their same body configuration and then just iterate off of that. And so this one, new one has, you know, like the extra dial, bigger battery, it's got a joystick, it's got all this other stuff, which I think they're just going to want to iterate off of, and they're going to probably just leave behind the A7 series and not develop it any further. That's just my guess. The third item is the Crane version 2, at least I think that's what it's called. I was kind of confused when I was talking to the person behind the booth. Maybe there's some stuff lost in translation, but the one I just reviewed a few months ago is different that they have at the show, and then it sounded like they were releasing something in June. Maybe it was the one I saw at the show and they're still developing it. Basically, the big differences are they're using shorter batteries, so the handle is shorter, which is a good thing. I kind of complained about that a little bit, that the handle was a little bit too long. They have more controls, which are kind of cool. And the third thing was they had a quick release plate built into the gimbal. So you, if I understood, couldn't test it, but you could basically take it off the gimbal and then just slide it onto like a Manfrotto fluid head or something like that. It's a kind of a shorter plate. I think that's what he said. Don't hold me to it, but if that's the case, that would be pretty cool because you could just go back and forth between your Manfrotto or your slider or whatever, put on your gimbal, and you could do everything quite quickly. All right, number 4 is the Yi 4K Plus. It's a 4K 60 action cam, so you can shoot 4K at 60p. And I got Summer Swim League coming up, and I do a lot of stuff underwater where I'm dragging the camera along with the swimmers, and I want to be able to do higher res slow motion, basically. I went over to the GoPro booth and I said, you get 4K 60 anytime soon? And they wouldn't tell me, unfortunately. But I would guess they would release something similar to that before Christmas time. That's kind of like their usual release schedule, maybe around September or so. But I've got Summer Swim League coming up, and I definitely want to get some nice high resolution slow motion at 60 frames per second. So I'm going to definitely be looking at that camera pretty soon. Next up, number 5 is the Insta Mike. I was actually heading to the airport, and these guys flagged me down and they gave me a quick demonstration. They didn't have a booth at NAB because the booths at NAB are very expensive. I got to check out their app. He gave me a demonstration how it worked. I didn't get to hear it, but I'd love to get one in for review. Basically, what's really cool about it is it's basically a tiny little microphone that you can just slap onto somebody's shirt or something like that. Or you could put it in odd different locations, mount it right on a guitar. It's so tiny that you can put it just about anywhere. And what I like to do is like more for walk and talks where you're kind of on a gimbal. and you don't want to mount like a receiver on top of your camera, and it might take things and put it off balance. So if you're doing a walk and talk, you can just slap it on somebody's shirt, start the recording, start the recording on your gimbal, and you're obviously going to have to sync them up and post later. But what's cool about it with the app is you could have your headphones going from your smartphone into your ears, and you could listen to it, monitor it before you hit record. So you can get the level set. I believe it's over Bluetooth. And then you don't have to worry about any sort of interference. So if you're in a place like NAB with tons of interference, you would never have to worry about it because all the information is stored on the device itself. It's not a wireless device. Well, it kind of is to the phone, but when you actually record, it's recording to the tiny little device itself. And you can have multiple mics. He showed me all the app. It looked pretty intuitive, looked pretty cool. So basically the concept is, what he was telling me is you could monitor the audio. So you get all your levels set, get everything going, you got your earbuds in, you can hear it, you got your iPhone in your pocket, and maybe you got your gimbal going. And then when you're ready to record, you just hit record, and then I believe you lose monitoring at that point is what he told me, I think. So I definitely want to get one of those in for review. That looks pretty interesting. It doesn't have to be like the highest quality, like a super high-end like Sennheiser microphone, lavalier or something like that. Even if it's slightly down, if it's those situations where you just don't want to be like going up to somebody and running a wire up their shirt the first time you meet them, and you just want to do something very quickly, you could just give them the mic, boom, start recording, clap a few times, get everything synced up later. I think that would be kind of an interesting solution to have in your camera bag at all times. All right, the sixth item is the SmallHD Focus. I've been using, it's out of the shot here, but I've been using the Shogun for years. It's been great and all, but it's a little bit too big. 7 inches is a little bit too big, and there's even like around the bezel there's even more. So it's a little bit bigger than you really want to like mount on top of your camera. But the SmallHD Focus seemed to be like the perfect size, and the way it was mounted was really cool. You could just flip it like selfie mode, and it would flip the screen over and flip it back, and it would be normal as you're looking at it. So it's pretty cool. I was out there in the morning when I was looking at it, when the sun was coming in at an angle, hitting the displays, and I could see them really well for the brightness that they had. So I would love to have like a solution for like the A7R2 or like the 6500, especially this one. This one has a very dim screen outside, and you could see like I got smudges and stuff like that on the screen. That makes it worse. But I was noticing on the SmallHD, even though it's a touch display and we were touching it and bringing up the scopes and everything like that, I wasn't seeing like the kind of reflective properties you're seeing right here with the fingerprints all over this one. And this one is a touch screen, and this one is not very bright. So for cameras like the A6500, this SmallHD Focus might be a pretty good seller for them. I think they're selling them for about $500. So when that one comes out, if it's not out already, I'll definitely be taking a look at that one. All right, the last and final item is a grading or reference monitor. As many of you know, I'm trying to find one for last year. Haven't found one yet. Either like really expensive, like the Flanders. In fact, I went by the Flanders booth and I was like, hey, OLED prices coming down? And they're like, no. Basically what I think was happening, the way he explained it to me, is like the big manufacturers that make TVs and stuff like that, they're just gone OLED right up to 55 inches, 65 inches. They're not doing the 24-inch kind of models. They're just not even going to play around with that, unfortunately. So I think the OLED prices for the 24-inch monitors that you might buy from Flanders are always going to stay up there. They're always going to be very expensive because those big panel manufacturers aren't making a lot of them, and Flanders gets them. They do their magic to it, whatever they do, and then you have to buy it for like $5 grand. It's really expensive, so that's kind of discouraging. I was talking to Ash Taylor. I got to meet him at the show, which is great. He suggested the LG32U D99W. It's got a couple things going for it. One is I believe you can actually install LUTs inside the monitor, which would be great for my setup because I would be going out from a Blackmagic mini monitor card to the display, and I could just store the LUT inside the actual display, which would kind of help the whole setup of what I've got in my office. The other thing it's got is like this new HDR10 support. So I don't know if that's going to become the standard. Talking around the different people at the show, it sounded like a couple of people mentioned It's really what ends up happening on YouTube. I think wherever YouTube decides to go with their HDR specs, and maybe they've already done it, I don't know. But whatever happens there, then I think everybody will kind of jump on that bandwagon. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is 2 things I didn't see at the show. A lot of discouraging that it wasn't there. The first one was the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I was kind of hoping that they would update that. Kind of sounds like they want to. They just don't have maybe the technology to do it in such a small form factor to shoot raw 4K. It sounded like they want to do kind of maybe a Super 35 sensor and do it in such a small package without it overheating. And it sounds like maybe they're trying, but they haven't figured out how to do that yet, is what I understand what's going on there. And the other thing was Canon. I went over to the Canon booth like I do every year, and I asked them, you know, like, where's my 4K mirrorless camera I want, you know, that kind of stuff. And I had a discussion with them, and basically it sounds like they're not doing much, especially in that $3,000 market and below in a small handheld form factor. I'm not talking about the C100, C500 type series, or even like the C700 series, which is a monster of a camera. It was funny. I'll play, to end this video, a little humor. It was kind of like my conversation at the Canon booth, but I didn't record it. Max Yurev did. And let me play that for you, and I'll talk to you guys later, and watch this and have a giggle.
Is this your new camera?
This one's actually a little bit older on the camera. This is the C102.
So it doesn't do 4K?
No, it's a 4K chip, but it only records HD.
My iPhone shoots 4K.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of giving it.
How much does this camera cost? Oh, they lowered the price on it?
They did, yeah.
Is that because it doesn't do 4K?